What it do, y'all, and welcome back to my channel. For today's video, I'm very excited to finally be able to sit down and film this video. I've been meaning to film this for quite literally months now, but at the height of when I really wanted this to go up, I was prepping for my move, and things just kind of went downhill from there. But basically, if you've never seen this type of video, people will typically go through their makeup collection and quite literally count how many items they have in each respective category. I think this is really good to keep yourself honest on like the reality of how quickly you're going through your makeup, how much makeup in certain categories works for you, etc., etc. If you don't know, I also do quite a bit of project panning type content, and so I will use that understanding that I've been doing for almost the whole time period that I've been here and then prior to being on YouTube, and I will take that into consideration when I look at the quantity of the actual hard numbers of how many products I have in each category. So I hope you guys are interested. Let's just dive on in. Alrighty, so I will just say very quickly, I did film this makeup look, although it is my August membership tutorial, where it's more of a get ready with me, not necessarily a straight up tutorial. So in case you are interested, I always have my membership linked down below, and I will also have, of course, my video linked down below. But in the event that you can't afford it or whatever, I always have all of the items listed and linked down below. That is on my face. So just check out down there in that description box, and you should get all the information that you're interested in, if you're interested in, on your girl's face. Now, I will give you guys a caveat. My numbers tend to always be a little shaky when it comes to these inventories. I think this is the second time that I've done a makeup inventory. I usually like to try to hit it at June at some point, because that's halfway through the year, and you know, you've accrued certain items since the declutter, and I tend to do my declutters in December, January time period. And as I'm starting to mentally like prepare for said declutter, I thought it would be really good to go ahead and do these hard numbers. I do have a whole like notepad, so I have my numbers written down. Let's just dive on in, shall we? First things first, primers. Now, when it comes to primers, it depends on the type of primer, how quickly I can get through it, if we're being honest. But I wrote down 3 because that's how many I had in my storage, but I'm gonna go with, see, this is why I told you guys my numbers are always a little off, because I have storage here on my desk. I have products that I am reviewing inside my desk, and then I have products that need to be put away on top of my storage. So certain items could be plus or minus 2 or 3. Let's go with that. So I wrote down 3, but I know it's definitely 4 because I did not include my project pan item. And when we're talking about me, when it comes to primers, I can get through at least 2 or 3 primers in a year. It just depends on the type of primer, and honestly, if the primer provides me the finish that I actually want. I know off bat, 2 of the 4 primers, without even thinking, definitely provide me that. I think a third one does as well. The one that I am shaky on, and I think it's going to take me quite some time to get genuine use out of, is the Danessa Myricks Balm Powder. Although originally I was really loving that powder, and I think there's definitely merit to it, it dries out my T-zone just a little bit too much for me, and it feels quite drying. So I have to use very little product, but that is a good thing in the sense that that product will last a very long time. So overall, having 4 primers for me is not an abundance, because I definitely could get through that in a reasonable amount of time. And for me, a reasonable amount of time is about the max a year. I think that is normal for somebody to expect to get through certain items in their collection. So that said, like I said, I have 4 primers to my knowledge, plus or minus a few, and I'm very comfortable with that figure. When it comes to foundations, once again, plus or minus, I have about 10. And that's a lot. I will say lately that's been kind of a standing number that I've had, whether it's after the declutter or before declutter. So, it's not unheard of for me to have that many. And I will say, out of the quantity that I have, I pretty much love all of the formulas that are still in my collection. And most importantly, they all work on my skin tone. They actually are my shade, which is the most important thing for me. If you saw last year's declutter, a lot of my complexion products got decluttered because they literally weren't my shade. And so I've been really focusing on, if I'm going to bring a foundation in, if I'm going to bring a concealer, etc., it really needs to be something that's actually going to work for my skin tone, whether I actually go in store and shade match, or whether I actually return said item if it does not work and I know it's not working. So regardless, having 10 I think is still quite a lot. There was a point in time where I could get through about 3-ish foundations in a year. So I would have loved to kind of stick to the 5 foundation zone area, but who knows, maybe I'll start actively wearing more foundations to work, especially like with the foundation that I'm wearing today. It is quite skin-like and it really blends in with my skin effortlessly. So I could throw it on before I head to work and nobody would be the wiser. Not saying that anybody has to know that I'm wearing makeup or has to know that I'm not wearing makeup. I just prefer to stay low key, if it makes sense. But anyways, I definitely want to get through quite a few, if possible, maybe 1 or 2 more foundations before the year's up, because I have a couple of foundations on my wish list / already in a cart waiting for me to press checkout. So I really want to stick close to that 10 foundation mark, and hopefully as the trends change and people's opinions on wearing, no makeup, I'm sure is going to change back to 2017, 2018, full coverage, all of that. I can really love and use the foundations that I have now, because I am not a huge fan of full coverage. That's not your girl. So I'll be able to really focus in on what I already have. So yeah, anyways, I currently have 10 foundations. As for concealers, I'm around 7 concealers, and for me, that is a lot. A lot of people, that's not necessarily a huge figure, because people get through concealer quite quickly and, efficiently and all of that. But for me, it takes me a year, if not more, to get through a concealer, because I don't wear a lot of concealer. I don't find that I need a lot of additional concealing after I put a foundation base down. And so for me, having 7 is quite excessive. So I'm pretty much going to say no more concealers for a good amount of time, which is perfectly fine. I don't find that I am the best to review concealers, because like I said, I don't need a lot of concealing. So for me, it's just more of balancing out my face so I have more dimension. It's not necessarily about concealing any particular zone at all. So once again, I have 7 concealers to my knowledge, plus or minus a few, and that's a bit excessive for me. So your girl is going to go ahead and halt when it comes to purchasing of concealers. And I didn't really talk about halting, other categories such as foundations. There's a reason for that. Like I said, I already have a couple in my cart, but when it comes to concealers, that's just truly unacceptable for me. When it comes to foundations, like I said, I can generally get through a handful in a year, but concealers, I literally don't get through. At least, if anything, I get through 1 a year. So I really don't need any more concealers. That's why I said a halt on that and not on anything else, if that makes sense. When it comes to powder, I really don't have very many. For somebody who is combination oily, you would expect me to have a lot more of a robust collection when it comes to powder, but I am strictly pressed powder, and I find that a lot of pressed powders that people are into, they just don't work for me. They're not my cup of tea. So I would say I have about 3, if memory serves me correctly, and I'm counting all the things that I actually have, and that's not a lot. It's not a lot at all. I actually have a powder in one of my carts as well, because I think that it would be nice to have a couple more modern, newer recommendations for you guys, but also just for me. I mean, I love my Pat McGrath, I love my Seam powder, and I also have my Kosas powder. Oh, and I also have Dior. So I'm definitely up to what, 4 two there, one. Yeah, I'm up to about 4 in powders, which I think having 4 or 5 powders is reasonable. A majority of my powders are like a translucent color, which is my preferred kind of coloring, but I do have 2 that are like a skin tone color, but they don't give a lot of pigment when you use them, which is why they're still in my collection. So overall, I definitely think that my powder game, once I add this one, will be pretty good and solid. I probably won't buy another powder until next year, if then. It's just not an active category that I tend to buy a lot of. Now let's dive into cheek products, shall we? I tend to do a lot. I love cheek products. So I have quite the category in the collection, if you will. So when we're coming with cream bronzers, I have about 17 cream bronzers physically in my collection, and we're not of course talking about any of the things that I'm testing out because they might not make it into my collection. 17 bronzers, depending on the person, could be a lot. I like to have quite the variety, and if you guys did not see, I recently did a bronzer video where I talked about my top 5 of all time for people of color, and I will hopefully have that either linked in the cards or down below for you guys for easy access. When it comes to me and like my collection, I find that I get quite a bit of use out of my cream bronzers. Cream bronzer and powder bronzer I pretty much put on every time I put on makeup. That is just like a constant necessity for me. I just love how it makes my base have a little bit of dimension and versatility to it. But when it comes to cream bronzer, I think having, you know, the 17 isn't too abundant. That said, there are definitely some shades that I think I've been holding on to for dear life for no reason, and I will probably do a decent declutter this year. There's just quite a few things that I've just been holding on for memorabilia or whatever. I just don't need it. I don't need it anymore, and I will just go ahead and declutter it, and hopefully somebody else can either get use out of it or, you know, it'll find its way into the garbage. But when it comes to finishing a cream bronzer, I think I finish about, depending on the formula. If it's a liquid cream bronzer, I can actually get through those quite quickly. I got through 1 liquid bronzer this year, and I hit my goal in another, and I'm working on a 3rd now. So that gives you kind of perspective on the quantity of cream bronzer I use quite a bit of bronzer compared to the normal consumer, so there is that. But I'm not really hating the number of 17. That's a somewhat reasonable number. Could I go down to like literally my top favorites? Yes, of course. But even though I don't do a lot of comparison videos, I think having the comparison of all of these bronzers in my collection for reviewing purposes would be great. I do hope to do like a swatch fest of all of my bronzers and stuff, hopefully before I get to that declutter. That can happen very soon, hopefully, if everything works out. That way there's like a permanent record, and then I don't even feel the need to like have it permanently in my collection because there's a permanent record on my channel for anybody who is interested. As for powder bronzers, I have about 14 plus or minus bronzers in my collection permanently. Now, powder bronzers I do find take a longer time for me to get through, especially because a lot of the time I find I hit hard pan because I do cream and then powder more or less with the same brush. I will blend them out. So I do tend to get quite a bit of hard pan because of that. And so it takes me a longer time to get through said products. That said, I don't mind having a really high quantity of powder bronzers. If anything, I think the creams could definitely go down because creams expire a lot quicker than powders, but I have a good robust collection of both, and for that to be one of those categories of makeup that I absolutely always reach for when I sit down to put makeup on, I don't think that's an overabundance. Is it? Yes. I mean, who? I'm an influencer, right? Or a YouTuber or whatever you want to call me. So, you know, most people tend to be those who are more maximalistic in their subject matter on their channel than minimalistic. But I'm not hating it specifically when it comes to bronzer. When it comes to cream blush, that number just kept ticking up. And to be honest, these numbers might be quite a bit off because sometimes I have cream products in my powder blush organizer because the powder blush organizer is just bigger than the cream one. But I would say I have easily somewhere around 30 cream blushes. And I will say this is definitely a category that very recently I just grew to absolutely adore. I think there's so many great formulas out there now that give pigment for somebody of my skin tone, that give that versatility, that blendability, that for me, I absolutely love cream blushes. If I had to choose between cream blush and powder blush, 110%, it's going to be cream. I just love the blendability and the overall finish that I get from a beautiful, beautiful cream. Like today, I didn't wear powder. I honestly haven't really reached for my powder blush in quite some time for my project pan. And if you're wondering, I use quite a bit of project pan items today to do my look. So for me, you know, having 30 cream blushes, yes, is it a lot? It's a lot. Let's not joke around. How many cream blushes have I finished since this like abundance or surge of purchasing? Zero. But at the same time, I get so much enjoyment from the quantity of cream blushes that I have and the versatility and the different brands. I can definitely showcase, you know, high-end drugstore and indie, all from my cream blush collection, and I love that. I love kind of thinking about potentially doing the old school YouTube videos where you do full face of drugstore, full face of high-end, full face of luxury, my most expensive full face, stuff like that. I think that those are so unique and interesting, especially in today's market. And so I don't really mind having a plethora of the cream blushes in my collection as long as they all work for me and for my skin tone. So yeah, there is that. Is it an abundance? Of course, 110%, but I'm okay with that abundance. And when it comes to powder blush, like I said, I think these numbers are a little off, but it's still a lot. I'm looking at somewhere around 37 powder blushes. That's a lot. That's a lot. I hold true that it is a lot, but I've always been an avid fan of blush. That was one of the categories that I wore of makeup prior to this kind of resurgence and relove in my adulthood. In high school, that was the one thing, like if I put something on, it was a powder blush, an eyeshadow, and that was pretty much, that was it, you know. I did do foundation for like for special occasions, and really I only wore makeup for special occasions, but I'm on a tangent. Nonetheless, blush has been one of those categories that I have loved since I started wearing makeup pretty much. And so for me, 37 blushes, it is a lot. I'm not gonna underscore that by any means. But like I said, there are quite a few blushes that I've been hanging on for dear life that I don't even think about, I don't look at. So those will definitely be seeing the garbage this year. And then I also just need to really assess, like, are these things that I actually want to reach for? Are they going to give me the finish that I want? You know, so I definitely think this year my declutter, so I'll just give you guys a forewarning, if you will. My declutter is really going to be about, do these products give me a finish and an overall makeup look that I want? A lot of them, not so much, because a lot of this stuff I picked up when I was still very much avid into the full-on matte look, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with it, but that's just not what I reach for, and it's not what I've reached for years now. And so there's no reason for me to continue to hoard this makeup when somebody else who is still actively in that phase and maybe permanently wants that kind of vibe and that aesthetic can get it then. So nicely, cream highlighter has never been a category that I got a lot of. I found that a lot of cream highlighter formulas just don't provide what I want. So I have plus or minus about 6 cream highlighters, and I think that's a perfectly reasonable number. Honestly, even going through my drawers today, I saw that there were a couple that I'm like, I still have that. Why is that still here? So there are quite a few that I can see me honestly getting through, or not getting through, I apologize, getting rid of during my declutter this upcoming year, and that will be perfect. I mean, will I try a cream highlighter here or there? Probably, but in the grand scheme of things, having a really small cream highlighter collection is going to be my route. It's just not a preferred formula that I find that I get a lot of enjoyment out of. Typically, I just prefer a nice powder highlighter or even a big gelée highlighter that'll give me a little bit more of a cream effect, but a powdered finish. And then if we're coming to our powder highlighters that I have in my collection, I would say I have about 25 highlighters, once again, give or take. And for me, I think that's perfectly fine. Depending on the season, depending on my mood, I definitely like to match my highlighters with my eyeshadow or with my blush. I also have quite a few like multi-chrome or dual chrome highlighters, so I'm not really opposed to the quantity of highlighters powder that I have. And although I wouldn't say that I've ever actually finished a highlighter, I find that I get my money's worth for what I feel is worth it before I decide that I need to get rid of a highlighter. So I'm not too opposed to the quantity of highlighters that I have, but it is, you know, excessive, if you will. Let's talk about my face palettes. I don't really buy a lot of face palettes anymore for the sheer fact that there was a time where the face palettes I was getting, all of the products did not work for my skin tone, and I just didn't enjoy all of the products. And so I really stopped buying them. And I think even last year, I really curated the quantity or the types of face palettes that I kept. And so right now in my collection, in the like face palette drawer, sometimes I have like smaller face palettes in like their respective, you know, blush, bronzer, highlighter drawer. But anyways, for a most part, once again, plus or minus, I have about 5 face palettes. And I think that's extremely reasonable for me. I'm sure there will be a day where I don't have any, although there's one that I definitely think I will always keep just for me. I think that'll help curb particular interest in buying previous palettes in the future. But overall, I definitely think 5 is completely reasonable for me. Now, once again, how many have I ever finished? I've actually never finished a face palette. I've never actually targeted a face palette enough to try to finish it, but I'm very happy with the face palettes that I have. I will say that. Really quickly, just getting some of these outliers out of the way. When it comes to setting sprays, in my physical collection right now, I have 3. I have 3 setting sprays. Setting spray is not a category that I think I need to limit myself by any means. I typically can get through 1 or 2 a year. If not, no big deal at all. But I don't think that that's a category that I typically buy a lot of. So for that reason, having the abundance of 5 or 4, whatever I just said, what did I just say? I just said 3. But I have 4 because I forgot the one that's in my bathroom right now. That's not terrible. It's not terrible at all, and I'm far from annoyed by that. I also have single eyeshadows, and I kind of combined some cream shadows in this category, so I apologize for that, but I have about 23. That's a lot for me. The quantity and times that I'm actually reaching for them is very low, and that's not even actually including what's on my desk right here. So if I'm going to include what's on my desk, I'm going to go with I have somewhere around 30. And once again, that's a lot. It's a lot. I tend to reach for those really when I'm just doing makeup for me to run out the door, because it's just a one and go type of eyeshadow type of product that I'll reach for. And who knows, maybe in the future I will start to kind of use more of these items, but for right now I'll pretty much set with those single shadows, and I'll probably never pick up another one unless I actively start using them again, as I was earlier this year. I just have not been doing it this end portion of the year, mainly because I've been trying to get my job understanding, and I try to get as much sleep as I can because overnights are not for the weak. Okay, so I actually was talking about the incorrect thing just now. That number, the 23, is actually for eyeliners. If we're talking about my single shadows, it's almost about 40. So just to FYI that. But when it comes to my eyeliners, like I said, I have about 23, which I think to an extent could be excessive, but I have a variety of colors, and there was a point where I would really match my eyeliner with my eyeshadow look, and I definitely think that I love the concept of that. It's just a lot of times I'm lazy. I'm lazy. So I definitely think that the quantity of eyeliners I have is good. I'm not really actively out here searching for new eyeliners to pick up unless it's like a brand that I already have. It's like my preferred eyeliner brand, which I do have a handful of those, and they have a new shade. Yeah, I'll pick it up. And then I will probably get rid of whatever the duplicate of is of like a non-favorite brand. But outside of that, I'm perfectly fine with the 23. I'll keep them until they don't work, and then when I find that they're not working, I'll throw them away at that point. Okay, so I think we're down to lip products outside of my cream shadows. So cream shadows, I have a bunch in my collection, but I also have a bunch right here on my desk. So I would say I have about 25 to 30 cream shadows. And this is a category that really blossomed because I actually will reach for a matte cream shadow to do as a base. So I actually have my eyeshadow bases in this category, or in this like numbering right now, because I use them interchangeably. Sometimes I'll reach for a cream matte base, sometimes I'll reach for an eyeshadow primer, and I think that they can work perfectly, kind of symbiotically, just depending on what my ultimate vibe is for my full face, if you will. So that is that for that category. I love my cream shadow sticks, and that's another category that I will reach for if I want to do a one and done type of look just for me, or even just for YouTube, but I don't feel I need to film it. So that is definitely something that I am okay with that quantity, because I actually do get decent amount of use out of them. The only reason you don't see me using a cream shadow lately is because right now the eyeshadow primer that I have in my project pan is an actual primer and not the cream shadow stick. But I already did go through one cream shadow stick this year. If we're talking about quantity of times that I'm actually going to finish a cream shadow stick, it's not in abundance, but I'm perfectly fine with the quantity that I have personally for me. Now we're into lips. So let's start off with lip liners. I have about 9 lip liners, and of course they're all browns. Now, depending on the formulation, I can get through multiple in a year, or it takes me the whole year to get through it. For example, Makeup Revolution, I have multiple lip liners from them in Americano Brown. I get through those very, very quickly. It's an extremely creamy lip liner, so it just glides on and it's just very easy to get through it. Same with the Juvia's Place lip liner. I got through that very, very quickly. But the Makeup Forever lip liner, which is a lot thicker and drier of a formula, it's taking me almost a year, if not more, to get through that. So it's really a variety of how quickly I will get through it and how slowly I'll get through it. I will say I have quite a few creamier lip liners in my collection. So the quantity of having like 10 lip liners for me is not too bad, because I know the really creamy ones I can get through. And most likely after I finish this Makeup Forever one, I will target some of those creamier lip liners to get through them. I will say, although sometimes the color is beautiful, I do prefer a thicker and kind of drier formula lip liner similar to the Makeup Forever. So, I'll get through those and then probably just repurchase what I want. And so ultimately that's not a category that I worry about having an excessive amount of, because I know I can get through those relatively quickly and easily. It's just, I'm really trying to target my Project Pan one as of right now. As for lip balms, now I have a lot of lip balms, and most of them are honestly in a variety of different purses, book bags, at work, etc. So I would say here in this beauty space, I have about 17 or 18 lip balms. And that also includes lip oils as well. But like I said, I have them in pretty much all of my purses, at work. So these are things that I get through though. I mean, I definitely reach for my lip balms. If I feel like my lips are dry, I reach for my lip balms and I actively get through them. I would say I get through about 3 to 5 a year. So having the amount that I have is not bad, especially because right now we are seeing a huge resurgence in this type of category of makeup. And I'm sure once again, as soon as people are no longer into kind of the natural girl aesthetic and they're more into full glam, liquid lipsticks will be coming around. And as though that's not a category that I really reach for, I won't feel the need to buy it. So I don't mind hoarding my favorite products now and, concerned that soon they will no longer be actively purchased and I'll have what I want during those time periods. Let's go ahead and talk about liquid lipsticks. Although it's not a category that I have a lot of, I still have quite the plethora of lip products. So I have 12 liquid lipsticks. pretty much I've whittled those down to very much exclusively nudes. It's just not me to do colorful lips anymore. At the beginning of my makeup journey, I definitely did, and I had so much fun with it, matching and, you know, creating unique full faces based on my eyeshadow look and my lip color, but that's no longer me. I really enjoy just having a neutral lip, kind of very glowy, shiny, skin native cheek area, and then of course really ba-boom with the eyeshadow. So I think the 12 liquid lipsticks is perfectly fine. I'm sure this year when I go through my declutter, there are going to be more that dried out and I'll end up having to actually throw them out, which is perfectly fine. And I just won't be repurchasing them really, because it's not a category that I reach for a lot. I tend to really stick with a glowy type lip. So yeah. Then we have lipsticks. So like the bullet lipsticks that come in the little short compacts, or in like the House Labs or LYS, it's like the very thin kind of bullet lipstick. Anyways, I have about 24, 25 plus or minus, all that jazz. And I think that's reasonable. That is actually a category that I will reach for, because a lot of times I can throw a gloss on top, or it's a satin finish lipstick. So I don't mind actually wearing that, because I still get that nice opacity from a color, but I don't feel like my lips are about to dry out when I'm wearing them. So I'm definitely very comfortable with the 25 lipsticks. And I actually kind of like that that is pretty much a majority of my lip collection, because that's really what I'm reaching for. Today I have my lip liner, my lipstick, and I threw on a little bit of a lip gloss on top, but it's really my lipstick that is carrying my color, and that's what I wanted. So I'm very happy that that category is higher. How often do I get through a lipstick? I would say about, depending on how often I'm wearing makeup, maybe 1 to 2 a year. That's fine for me. I don't really wear lipstick outside of wearing a full face. So I get through a lot more balms because I can wear those whether I have a full face or not. But yeah, I don't mind the quantity of lipsticks I have. And, you know, as they start to dry out or my preferences change, of course, I will declutter them, because I don't give lip products that I've used to other people. So there is that. And I think the last category that I need to talk about is gloss. And really, lip glosses is a category I feel like people either love or hate. And I'm pretty indifferent to them. I like adding a gloss to my lips. If, let's say, I do like a lip tint or a liquid lipstick, just to add that moisture and the overall finish the way that I want. I currently have about 6 lip glosses in my collection, and I'm perfectly content with that. I think last year I was able to get through 1 full lip gloss. That was because I was actively using it. I mean, I was using her as a lip oil, as a lip gloss, as a lip balm. I was using her for everything because she was clear, so it was really easy to do that. This year I do have another lip gloss in my collection, or my project pan, I'm sorry. And I have found that I've lost it many times throughout this year. So I doubt I'm gonna be able to finish this, but that's perfectly fine. I mean, it's not like the lip glosses are overrunning me, and I do actively use them when I sit down to do a full face. So there is that. Okay, so we've gone through pretty much all of the products in my collection outside of eyeshadow palettes. Honestly, I don't have the energy to count those at all. But I don't find that I personally want to curate my eyeshadow palettes in a monetary standpoint. It's more of, if I don't get enjoyment from using the palette or seeing the color scheme, then it has to go. So that's why I almost never actually use that category in this inventory. But if I had to guesstimate, I would say I have somewhere around 150 eyeshadow palettes. I love eyeshadow palettes. I love eyeshadow in general. Even if I'm doing a very neutral eye, there's different textures, different variety that you can put on those eyeshadow looks that makes it unique for that day, that week, that month, whatever. And so I absolutely love eyeshadow palettes. And I will probably always love eyeshadow palettes and always have a relatively excessive collection when it comes to that regard. Right now, I have plenty of storage that I'm really not worried about making sure that I have, you know, room for it. But if there comes a time where I need to worry about that, then I'll worry about it. So yeah, that's my makeup collection. I hope you guys enjoyed hearing more in depth about it and, you know, getting some opinions on which kind of sections of my collection I think I have too much of or too little of. Really, I don't have too little of anything, let's be serious. But you know, there's certain collections that I wouldn't hate to, or certain categories that I would not hate to have purchasing more, you know, towards the end of this year, and just in the future. In certain sections, of course, that like I just need to do a full-on stop. I just need to use what I have and move on. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I will see you guys in my next one. Bye guys.